Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats as the program will begin momentarily.
Please welcome U.S. Secretary of Interior, Deb Haaland.
Thank you all. I just remember there's a step. Now I can actually see everyone. Thank you so much. That was so very kind of you. Guwatsi helpa duhiname itakiwitsa shuimi hanu. Good afternoon, everyone. It's such an honor to welcome you to the Department of the Interior for today's summit and to see so many friends, collaborators, partners gathered in one place. I also want to thank those who are joining us online. I love that we have the pleasure to host this event here in Interior's historic building. It was built as part of FDR's New Deal in the 1930s, and you can tell by the beautiful architecture. Fast forward to 2010, and Congress passed legislation to name this building after one of the greats, Stuart Lee Udall. He played a key role implementing laws that fundamentally changed our country's relationship with nature, like the Wilderness Act, the Land and Water Conservation Act, the predecessors to the Clean Air, Clean Water, and Endangered Species Acts, just to name a few. He oversaw the creation of many national parks and monuments, and through it all, he was a champion for civil rights and for tribal nations. He was, in a word, transformational. In this moment, we too need to be transformational. Our planet, our young people, our fellow citizens using their voices to be heard outside. They all need us to work together to build a brighter future. You'll hear today about how the Biden-Harris administration is working to do just that. You'll hear about historic investments to make our country more resilient to climate change and speed our transition to a clean energy future. You'll hear how President Biden has challenged his government to walk the walk when it comes to environmental justice. And you'll hear about new protections for some of our most special places on Earth. I'm proud of the role the Department of the Interior plays in this work. In the past 2 years, we've taken swift action to protect the boundary waters in Minnesota from the impacts of harmful mining. We have kick-started efforts to protect additional places from the Thompson Divide in Colorado to Chaco Canyon in my home state of New Mexico. We established a new National Wildlife Refuge in Montana. The Lost Trail Conservation Area will enhance access for outdoor recreation and protect big game habitat. We're investing billions, that's billions with a B, to help clean up our lands and waters from legacy pollution from abandoned mines and orphan oil and gas wells across the country. We're making public lands more welcoming to all people. We've wiped a racist and derogatory word from use on federal lands, and we're not stopping there. With new urban parks, enhanced accessibility measures, and investments in youth conservation corps programs across the country, we're making sure that everyone, no matter their zip code or income, has the chance to experience the great outdoors. In the coming weeks, the Bureau of Land Management will issue a draft plan to provide land managers with the tools and resources to protect wildlife habitat and clean water, and to address the mounting challenges facing public lands, like devastating wildfires, historic droughts, and invasive species. It will also support smart, balanced development. We must continue to deepen our collaborative work with tribes, states, local communities, and private landowners. And we look forward to your feedback on this draft rulemaking that will help ensure this balance on our public lands. Perhaps most importantly, most transformational, is that we're working to honor tribal nations by advancing co-stewardship of our lands and waters. From Bears Ears in Utah to Phones Cliff in Virginia, thank you, Chief Ann, we're incorporating Indigenous knowledge and honoring tribes for their role in stewarding our lands and waters since time immemorial. 2 weeks ago, I signed an order to elevate the department's work to restore the American bison and prairie grasslands. And it won't surprise you that I teared up when I signed the document. I was thinking about how the federal government tried to erase Indigenous people in so many ways, taking their land, taking their children, taking their lives, and taking away the bison that were so central to many tribal nations' lifeways. But you know that the bison are still here, and Indigenous people are still here. And so it meant something indescribable that President Biden asked me to be his Secretary of the Interior. This week marks 2 years since I was sworn in, but I'll tell you, I never get used to it. Even today, speaking to you from the ancestral homelands of the Anacostan and Piscataway people, I am honored to be here. I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors and so many of our relatives who fought to keep what we still have. For all of us, for all of us. Because of them, I strive every day to leave the earth a little bit better for the generations that will come after me. This work is so meaningful to me. Every day I feel the urgency of time and the weight of the decisions we are making. I know you feel it too. And that's why you're here today. As we have experienced this month, the path toward a more just and equitable future is not always linear. And so I want to take this moment to say thank you. Thank you for being champions for conservation. Thank you for holding us accountable. And thank you for pushing us to embrace the transformation that we all need. We have a lot to celebrate, and we have a lot to look forward to. The work to ensure our young people have a safe and healthy planet to inherit is reliant on all of us. I'm so proud to be on this journey with you today and every single day. And I really hope that you enjoy the afternoon. Thank you all so much for everything.
Please welcome White House Council on Environmental Quality, Chair Brenda Mallory.
Oh my God, it is such a pleasure to look out over this audience and see so many familiar faces. Thank you all for being here. This is such an exciting day for us, and just listening to the Secretary talk about some portions of the work that has happened over the last couple of years is inspiring, and she, of course, is inspiring herself. So, first of all, thank you. Thank you for being here. I have the pleasure of joining with a little bit of a welcome, but first I want to start by asking us to do a little round of applause for the Secretary and for the staff at the Department of Interior for allowing us to be here. They are such tremendous hosts, and it's not that easy to host, so I'm very appreciative of them being willing to allow us to use their space. One of the special privileges of being at the Council on Environmental Quality is that we get to see and to lend a hand to the extraordinary and unheralded and indisposable work that is being done across the nation. All of it to deliver on the President's conservation promises. And I'm so proud of the teams that we have across the Department of Interior and Agriculture, the folks who are at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Department of Defense, the Army, the Corps of Engineers. All of these folks, both in the regions and in headquarters, are really pouring their hearts and souls into conserving and restoring America the Beautiful. Today is exciting because we get to celebrate some big new conservation milestones with the President of the United States, which makes it very special. But this is also a day to actually be excited about what you all are doing and what we in this room represent in terms of the new conservation movement. Just look around. The conservation movement that you're building reflects the very strengths of this country. It's big, it's bold, it's diverse, it's inclusive, it's vibrant, and more than anything, it's determined. And I say that having heard from many of you about many things, including some that are happening today. But you're galvanizing a new and powerful vision of conservation. One in which urgency and ambition are required, one in which traditions and priorities of tribal nations are supported and celebrated, and one in which every child in this country has a chance to experience the wonders of nature. These are the ideals that underpin President Biden's conservation priorities and his signature conservation initiative, America the Beautiful, which sets our nation's first conservation goal to conserve at least 30% of the U.S. lands and waters by 2030. And I saw this movement in action last year when I was in Tampa. There we had state, local, and federal leaders, local conservation organizations, and nearby ranchers working together to drive conservation efforts at a large scale. By their own definition, they were an unlikely coalition, but they had a shared goal to connect habitat across public and private lands so that treasured species can live and move safely across the state. Good conservation made good economic sense, and it improved their communities. It was a win all around, and this is the kind of locally led initiative that exemplifies what we are pursuing in America the Beautiful. But we know that success of this initiative requires more. Too many communities across the country still lack accessible parks, rivers, and green space. What we have to do is tackle this by infusing equity and justice in all our work and fighting to ensure that all communities have safe outdoor opportunities. Today, we will talk about several of the next steps we are taking in the President's America the Beautiful initiative. Yes, the President is using his pen today, and so that's always exciting. But we'll also talk about a new strategy that we are launching to better conserve and connect habitats so that wildlife can move freely across the landscapes. We'll talk about a new whole-of-government approach to ocean-based climate action. And we'll talk about something that I am thrilled to announce, and that is a commitment from 15 foundations to contribute over $100 million in tribal conservation and coast stewardship. Let's applaud that. I want to say thank you to the philanthropic leaders who are here today, as well as those who are rising to the challenge. Now, before I turn it over to Secretary Vilsack, I want to leave you with just a simple message. And this is, we will meet the President's conservation goals. We will conserve 30% of the U.S. lands and waters by 2030. We will deliver on our Justice 40 agenda and expand access to nature for all communities. We will honor our values and support the voluntary conservation efforts of farmers and ranchers and advance the conservation priorities of tribal nations. And how do I know that? I know that because we are well on our way. With the unprecedented investment in conservation the President has secured, with accelerated and locally led conservation efforts from coast to coast, and with the power of this movement, we will get there. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. Thank you for all the work that you do, and I look forward to our continued partnership.
Please welcome U.S. Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack.
Thank you, folks. Thank you. So, sitting in the back, waiting for my opportunity here to speak, and as I'm getting up to come out, Secretary Haaland says, "Knock 'em dead." And I said to her, "You are a very tough act to follow." And I think you'll agree with me. She has been a transformative Secretary of Interior, and she has been a great partner with us at USDA. Unfortunately, she spoke about half of the speech I was going to give. I was all prepared to talk about the boundary waters. Can't talk about that. Talk about the Thompson Divide. Very proud of that. Can't talk about that. Very glad to see that we got Bears Ears back to where it needs to be. But I can't really talk about that either. She mentioned it. She didn't mention the Tongass, and I'm happy to see that we finally got the roadless rule. So she did leave one very, very large project for us to talk about, but I wanted to talk for just a few minutes of your time today about some aspects of conservation that we might not normally think about. When I think of conservation, obviously as Secretary of Agriculture, in charge of the Forest Service, I think about conserving our forest lands around the country. And obviously we know that they have been hit hard with wildfire. And this administration, this president, early in the administration was very clear to me and to all of us that he wanted to get serious about a strategy that would preserve our forested areas from these wildfires, and that he was willing to put resources and the Office of the Presidency behind this. And I will tell you, I can't be prouder of being part of this administration for the commitment it has made to our U.S. Forest Service lands. 195 million acres, and I will tell you that for the first time really, we are putting serious resources behind the proper management of those forests, an opportunity for us to reduce catastrophic wildfire, to help promote communities to be more fire adaptive. And I believe we're going to save lives, we're going to save communities, and we're certainly going to save our forests. And for that, I think we all should be very, very thankful. The President's also been clear about the importance of us working with Native Americans as we do manage in a co-manage and co-stewardship responsibility. We obviously understand and appreciate that folks understand and appreciate through indigenous knowledge what to do in those forests. They've been doing it for literally centuries. We need to pay attention. We need to incorporate that in the way in which we manage our forests, and we need to work in that co-stewardship and co-manage responsibility to ensure that we do the very level best job for those forests. We also need to reforest. We need to make extensive investments in replanting areas that have been damaged. Fortunately, this administration was able to lift the cap off the Replant Act, and so we are literally looking at millions of new acres of replanted forests over the course of the next 10 years, and I'm certainly proud of that. The President was also clear that when he thought about conservation, he didn't want to leave out the notion of private working lands conservation. It's important and necessary for us to incorporate our efforts not just on public lands, but to ensure that we continue to have the rich soil that has been so productive for this great country. And that's why it's important for all of you to know and for all of you to share that we are very serious about soil health at USDA. We have a soil health initiative. We have workshops, additional training that's taking place. We have a monitoring network that's providing data and information and research. We're improving monitoring tools. We are working with groups all across this great country to do what we can to double cover crops. We're really committed to improving the soil health, to beginning to reverse the erosion and loss of topsoil in this country, and that's something we should also be willing to celebrate today. We also have made a significant commitment. That's okay, there are two people going to clap. Go ahead and clap. Folks, this is a serious point. It's important and necessary for us to think about conservation in the broadest possible context, because at the end of the day, what happens on those private working lands ultimately impacts and affects a lot of public area. And if you have any doubt about that, we'll go down to the Gulf of Mexico and we can all talk about the condition down there. This is incredibly important. And this is an administration that's taking this job very seriously and putting resources behind it. That's why we're excited about the historic commitment to private land working conservation that's contained in the Inflation Reduction Act. It's going to give us an opportunity to build on the work that we're doing with climate-smart commodities, where literally tens of thousands of farmers on millions, tens of millions of acres are going to be incorporating and embracing climate-smart practices for the first time ever in an effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to store more carbon and improve the soil health and water quality. This is an administration that has committed resources and effort behind this. So it's an exciting time at USDA in terms of conservation. It's an exciting time to see the CRP program back where it needs to be, adding acres instead of subtracting them in the previous administration. So when you look at the totality of everything that's taking place, from the work that's being done on public lands to the work that's being done in terms of preserving key areas like the Tongass, the work that's being done in trying to restore our forests and their health, the work that's being done in expanding private land conservation, advancing climate-smart practices, this is an administration that takes conservation seriously. I hope you all appreciate that. I know you do. I hope you appreciate that the Department of Agriculture wants to be a partner in this effort, is committed to this effort, and continues to work with all of you. Thank you very much.
Please welcome Senior Advisor to the President for Clean Energy, John Podesta.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here with Secretary Helen, with Secretary Vilsack, and Chair Mallory, and to be here with all of you. It's a great day, isn't it? Protecting our lands and waters for future generations is and always has been a fundamentally American idea and an American value. In protecting the natural wonders of Yellowstone, President Grant in the United States 150 years ago created the world's first national park. Then President Teddy Roosevelt signed the Antiquities Act, laying the blueprint for conservation that quickly spread across the globe. In 1910, more than a century ago, Roosevelt said, "Of all the questions which can come before this nation, there is none which compares in importance with the great central task of leaving this land even a better land for our descendants than it is for us." Today, we're here to celebrate and expand the conservation record of another great American president. President Biden conserved more lands and waters in his first year than any president since JFK. In his first 2 years in office, he invested more dollars in conservation than any president in modern history has done in a 2-year period. He restored the full area of 3 national monuments, Bears Ears, Grand Staircase Escalante, and Northeast Canyons and Seamounts. He's prioritizing tribal-led conservation and increasing the recognition of indigenous knowledge in federal decision-making. And as Brenda noted, he set an ambitious goal to protect 30% of U.S. lands, waters, and oceans by 2030, and we mean to meet that goal. President Biden's conservation record to date is impressive enough. Now he's investing even more resources through landmark laws, the Inflation Reduction Act, and bipartisan infrastructure law. These laws will restore habitats on our public lands and in the Great Lakes. They'll build corridors for wildlife to expand their habitats. They'll partner with farmers on conservation and climate-smart agriculture, as Secretary Vilsack noted. They'll bolster coastal resilience. They'll better manage our forests to protect communities from wildfires. They'll clean up legacy pollution, and they'll plant trees in underserved neighborhoods and cities across the country, and the list goes on. We see this as the biggest investment in climate resilience in history. Protecting ecosystems increases their ability to withstand the escalating impacts of the climate crisis, including severe drought and sea level rise, meaning less damage to local communities, and conserving natural carbon sinks like mangroves, forests, and soil means we're taking pollution out of the atmosphere. These new laws have enormous potential to protect American landscapes and seascapes and the people who depend on them for generations to come. But our work has only just begun. We have to make sure the benefits of these laws reach communities who've borne the brunt of pollution for far too long. Wallace Stegner famously said, "We simply need that wild country available to us, for it can be a means of reassuring ourselves of our sanity as creatures, a part of the geography of hope." Right now, we have an opportunity to create a future where every American can experience that geography of hope, drink clean water, and breathe clean air, experience those wild places in our country, and feel the economic benefits of new jobs and projects to protect our lands and waters. With the new resources in President Biden's agenda and today's bold announcements, I know that future will arrive sooner than we ever imagined. So let's conserve and invest in hope together. Thank you.
Please welcome Fort Mojave Chairman Tim Williams.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. What a day. What a day. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Timothy Williams, Chairman of the Fort Mojave Indian Tribe. Kamadu, and yupi muy espachaqua, patahanch kapitanidum, and yupsi muy nyolj, Williams imanchitum, iwanch chokam pipa hamakapchitum, ahakuluitum, avi kwame, iman vinch. The Mojave people, known as the people by the river, hold Aviqua May in our hearts. Aviqua May, also known as Spirit Mountain, lays within the vast landscape of this pristine land of southern Nevada. It is a place we know as our creation. It is the beginning of our traditional songs, and it is the place that Native nations throughout the Southwest hold sacred. When the president committed to protecting this sacred area at the White House Tribal Nations Summit, our community was filled with joy. What had once been a distant dream for our people suddenly seemed possible. Since the beginning of the Biden and Harris administration, the president has demonstrated the commitment to respect tribal nations and our nation-to-nation relationship. Under his leadership, we have a seat at the table, and we have seen an unprecedented era, an opportunity for our tribal communities. And we are all grateful to the president for taking historic action to combat the climate crisis and conserve and restore our nation's land and waters. On behalf of tribal nations who hold this land sacred, the members of the Fort Mojave Indian Tribe and the Fort Mojave Tribal Council, it is my honor to introduce the President of the United States of America, the Honorable Joe Biden.
Please, have a seat. Thank you very, very much. Chairman Williams, thanks for the introduction and for your leadership of Fort Mojave Indian Tribe. You know, it was great to meet you last week in Nevada. And thank you, Secretary Howland, for hosting this White House Conservation Summit here. You know, I want to thank you for all your fellow cabinet members and the federal employees across agencies to carry out this historic conservation plan across our nation, because it is a big deal. We're grateful to have incredible partners, including members of the Congress, tribal leaders, conservation advocates, all here today. And folks, it's my first week in office, I issued an executive order establishing the country's first ever national conservation goal. And we called it the America the Beautiful. And it's a nationwide campaign to protect and conserve by 2030 at least 30% of the lands and waters that support and sustain our nation. And last year on Earth Day, I signed an executive order to protect America's forests and to harness the power of nature in the fight against climate change. I'm here today to talk about an incredible progress that we've made. You know, my first year in office, we protected more lands and waters than any American president since John Kennedy. And with the help of members of Congress here today, I signed a bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act, the largest investment in climate and environmental justice and conservation ever, anywhere in the world. For the past 2 years, these investments have helped protect our iconic outdoor spaces, preserve our historic sites, and make our nation more resilient to the devastating impacts of climate change. We also relied on important partners to help us meet these goals. Farmers and ranchers have implemented critical conservation and stewardship practices across 50 million acres in private land. and areas the size of the state of South Dakota. In Alaska, we protected the Tongass National Forest and the salmon Bristol Bay. We restored the protections and status the previous administration rolled back and Bears Ears National Monument. The Grand Staircase Escalante, the northeast canyons and seamounts of the Marine Monument. Last year, I had the honor of visiting Camp Hale, Continental Divide in Colorado, and adding that to the list of national monuments for the first time to be added to my administration. It matters. This matters because when we conserve our country's natural gifts, we're not just protecting the livelihoods of people who depend on them, like the family farms, outdoor recreation, businesses, rural communities, welcoming visitors from all across the country and around the world, as that matter. We're protecting the heart and the soul of our national pride. We're protecting pieces of history, telling our story that will be told for generations upon generations to come. You know, our national wonders are literally the envy of the world. They've always been, and they always will be, central to our heritage as a people and essential to our identity as a nation. That's why the budget I released earlier this month includes new funding to increase access to our natural areas for Americans from all backgrounds. We're going to continue to take aggressive steps toward conservation with the big actions I'm about to announce today. First, I'm proud to use my authority under the Antiquities Act to establish and I want you to know it's a big deal, the Havaniqua May. I'm having trouble. Thank you. I got it. I just know it as Spirit Mountain in Nevada. It's one of our most beautiful landscapes. It ties together one of the largest contiguous wildlife corridors in the United States, 500,000 acres. Breathtaking. Breathtaking deserts, valleys, mountain ranges, rich in biodiversity, sacred lands that are central to the creation story of so many tribes who have been here since time immemorial. Look, you know, it's a place of reverence, it's a place of spirituality, and it's a place of healing. And now it will be recognized for the significance it holds and be preserved forever, forever. I look forward to visiting myself, and I want to thank my friends in Congress who fought so hard for this day to become possible. Senators Jackie Rosen, Catherine Cortez Mastow, Representative Susie Lee, Dina Titus, and a special thanks to you, Mr. Chairman, for your partnership. Look, second thing we're doing is we're protecting the Castner Range in Texas as a national monument. Thank you, Veronica Escobar, Representative, for your leadership in this. Now, I hope you'll still have reason to call me because you called me a lot on this one. This is managed by the United States Army at Fort Bliss, and it tells the story of the tribal nations who live there and the members of our armed forces who trained in those lands. It's also a place of incredible beauty. And right now, as winter gives way to spring, Mexican gold poppies are bursting into bloom. You see, what I wanted to do is have all this in a video behind me here because when you see it, it's just breathtaking. Transforming desert plains and hills into a sea of vibrant yellow and oranges, framed in the rugged mountains of the blue sky. The people of El Paso have fought to protect this for 50 years. Their work has finally paid off. And now we'll clear the area of old munitions, create access to the outdoors for communities and parks, and we're going to green spaces that are harder and harder to find. And importantly, Castner Range will be preserved for future generations. Folks, the third thing we're doing today, I'm issuing a presidential memorandum to directing the Secretary of Commerce to immediately consider designating 777,000 square miles of the Pacific Ocean southwest of Hawaii as a new national marine sanctuary. You know, that's an area larger than Alaska and Colorado put together and 3 times the size of Texas. That's no small amount of land underground. It would make it the largest ocean area on the planet with the highest level of protection. And it will help us meet our goal of conserving, the goal I set when I got elected, of protecting and conserving 30% of our oceans. It's a network of islands and reefs where waters are filled with the most diverse marine life on the planet. Sharks, rays, marlins, tunas, turtles, whales, ancient coral forests, many that are threatened and endangered right now, that won't be. And I want to thank Senator Brian Chance and Maisie. Maisie, where are you? There you are. There, I want to say Maisie and Representative Ed Case and Joe Kukuna. And many Native Hawaiian Pacific Island leaders, look, who have worked tirelessly to protect our oceans. I want to thank you. I mean, I genuinely mean it. Thank you. It wouldn't have happened without you. And that's not all we're doing today. Earlier, you heard Secretary Haaland announce that she's taking steps to modernize the management of America's public lands, to put conservation on an equal footing with development, to safeguard more places for people to hike, hunt, camp, and fish. And we're going to be moving ahead today with a strategy to conserve the wildlife corridors across agencies and across our entire landscape. Whether it's a National Park Service or the Bureau of Land Management or the Forest Service or private landowners, we need to be coordinated to make sure the habitats we're conserving along migration routes, no matter where or who's in charge of that land. And today, we're releasing the first ever United States Ocean Climate Action Plan to harness the tremendous power of the ocean to help in our fight against the climate crisis. We know and you well know, we can reduce emissions by building offshore wind farms, better protect our coastal and fishing communities from worsening storms, changing fisheries and other impacts on climate change. And I'm also committed to working with the tribal leaders here, as well as Senator Patty Murray, Maria Cantwell, and Representative Mike Simpson, to bring healthy and abundant salmon runs back to the Colorado River system. Let me close with this. Our country's natural treasures define our identity as a nation. They're a birthright. They're a birthright. We have to pass down to generation after generation. They unite us. That's why our conservation work is so important. It provides a bridge to our past and to our future, not just for today, but for all ages. Rachel Carson, environmentalist and author, wrote, quote, "Those who contemplate the beauty of the earth find reserves of strength that will endure as long as life lasts." I'll share with all of you here today the enduring reverence for the power and the promise of the country's extraordinary natural wonders. And they are extraordinary. When I was vice president, I went to most of the national parks, and I brought my family because I wanted them to see them. Going down the Colorado River, the Snake River, just incredible, incredible, incredible places. We've got to keep it going. We've got to keep the faith. We've got to remember who we are. We're the United States of America, and we owe to our children, our grandchildren, our great-great-grandchildren, and all to come what we have and what we can preserve. There's nothing beyond our capacity if we work together. So God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's a good day. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated until the departure of the official party.
Please welcome Undersecretary of the Army, Gabe Camarillo.
Good afternoon, everyone. Secretary Vilsack spoke earlier in this program about having a tough act to follow up here on this podium. I woke up today knowing that I was going to follow the President of the United States. But in all seriousness, I want to thank Secretary Holland for hosting us, all of the other distinguished speakers and attendees for their contributions to conservation. And most importantly, I want to thank President Biden for protecting Kastner Range and entrusting the United States Army with its preservation. It's not too often that one's personal background and professional mission overlap. But today, as the Undersecretary of the Army and a proud native of El Paso, Texas, I am really delighted to take part in this special event. I was born and raised in El Paso as the son of first-generation Mexican immigrants. The Sun City still feels like home, and its people are still my community. And I know how much Kastner Range means to my community. The mountains are beautiful, they house incredible biodiversity, and they provide a respite from city life. Now, a diverse coalition of El Pasoans have been fighting to conserve Kastner Range for over 50 years. Some of them are in this room. As both an El Pasoan and as an Army official, I'm very proud of their advocacy and their impact. Now, after being sworn in as Undersecretary of the Army, Fort Bliss and El Paso was one of the very first places that I visited. The Army's had a very long and proud presence in the region. Our soldiers and their families are members of those communities. I pledged then, and I reaffirm again today, that the Army's commitment to cleaning, restoring, and conserving Kastner Range remains steadfast. As this audience knows well, the mission of the Army is to fight and win the nation's wars. And for 27 years, Kastner Range provided the space and rugged terrain necessary for our soldiers to train and to prepare for modern warfare. From the start of World War II to the height of the Vietnam War, Kastner Range served key combat training functions for our Army. The anti-aircraft and close combat training that was conducted there helped prepare our soldiers and kept our nation safe. But since the Army stopped using Kastner to train, we have been conducting environmental cleanup, which has accelerated in recent years. The Army knows that we have to be good custodians of this area moving forward. Kastner Range has been an indelible part of the U.S. Army's history, but now it's time to write a new chapter about the future of this natural treasure in El Paso, Texas. And to write this new chapter, we have work to do, and the Army is clear-eyed about the environmental remediation that lies ahead. We stand ready to execute a cleanup, to manage the remaining munitions, and to ultimately make Kastner Range safe for public access. The Army has a proven record of natural resource stewardship, not only because it's the right thing to do, but also because the Army works and lives where we train, and so do our families. Preserving the resources that we've been entrusted with is important to all who call this community home. And we've done this before. For instance, at Fort Huachuca in southern Arizona, which houses critical Army missions, we have over 6,000 active duty Army soldiers and over 7,400 families who live on the base, which is located near one of the most ecologically significant river systems in the Southwest. We've protected 7,300 acres of high conservation value land on that installation, which will support resilient water supplies and ensure that our operations are sustainable. We will continue to work to preserve the resources that local communities have entrusted us with, because we are part of those communities. Growing up in El Paso, I enjoyed the stunning landscapes created by the Franklin Mountains. Conserving Kastner will preserve more of that experience for future generations. And it brings me great joy to join you in marking an important day for Kastner Range, for our Army, and for the El Paso community. We look forward to partnering with the entire community in El Paso, Texas, to ensure that Kastner Range is restored, safe, and protected for generations to come. Thank you very much.
Please welcome Undersecretary of Commerce for Ocean and Atmosphere and NOAA Administrator Rick Spinrad.
Thank you. What a great day for conservation, isn't it? Distinguished guests, friends, colleagues, what an honor and a treat it is to be here today. And I want to thank President Biden especially for your bold leadership on the inseparably linked issues of climate change and conservation. Now, more than ever, communities across the country are feeling the impacts of climate change and extreme weather, from prolonged drought to hazardous flooding and widespread heat waves. These impacts underscore the importance of the Biden-Harris administration's whole of government approach, which you're seeing in abundant evidence here today, to address the climate crisis, including through the conservation and restoration of our shared lands and waters. Our natural spaces and natural resources are an integral part of our heritage and also directly support our well-being and economic engine. This is why NOAA is excited to take advantage of the nearly $6 billion in funds made available through the historic passage of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act so that we can boost natural infrastructure, restore habitat for wildlife, increase our resilience to climate and extreme weather, and strengthen our ability to conduct research and better understand climate impacts. As we continue to forge a comprehensive and collaborative federal response to the climate crisis, I'd like to highlight the progress NOAA has made to deliver on President Biden's goal of conserving, connecting, and restoring at least 30% of our lands and waters by 2030 as one of the goals of the America the Beautiful initiative. As part of NOAA's progress on ATB, over the past 2 years, we worked closely with the White House and the Department of Interior to support the President's action to restore the conditions of the Northeast Canyons and Seamounts Marine National Monument. NOAA and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service continue to make significant progress toward developing a joint management plan as well as implementing regulations. We designated the new Wisconsin Shipwreck Coast National Marine Sanctuary and initiated the designation process for the proposed Chumash Heritage and proposed Hudson Canyon National Marine Sanctuaries. We advanced research, education, and community partnerships at the newly designated Connecticut National Estuarine Research Reserve. We strengthened stakeholder input for area-based conservation and restoration through the establishment of the Marine and Coastal Area-Based Management Federal Advisory Committee. We advanced opportunities for safe, sustainable outdoor recreation in and on our lands and waters as a member of the Federal Interagency Council on Outdoor Recreation, with the Department of Commerce being one of the 4 departments to join an MOU to establishment. And we increased equitable access to nature for all Americans by representing the Department of Commerce as one of 10 departments to join a memorandum of understanding on promoting equitable access to nature in nature-deprived communities. As recommended in the America the Beautiful report, and as you heard mentioned just now by President Biden, NOAA will continue our work to expand our National Marine Sanctuary System and National Estuarine Research Reserve System, along with other efforts across the agency to conserve, restore, and manage critical habitats. This includes places like the Pacific remote islands. As you heard, home to some of the most diverse and remarkable marine life ecosystems enriched in history and cultural traditions. We are committed to doing so with our available resources and look forward to working with indigenous groups and other stakeholders on key opportunities. I'm so happy to share that with you. We're also committed to advancing the implementation of the other important and complementary initiatives which NOAA has been actively engaged in developing, including the Ocean Climate Action Plan and others mentioned earlier today. I'd be remiss if I didn't take just a moment to acknowledge that World Water Day is tomorrow. It'll be recognized globally. Our NOAA scientists and researchers work every day to collect vital data about the water cycle, provide critical forecasts about weather and water to citizens and emergency managers, and ensure that our coastal and ocean waters are healthy and able to support fish, marine life, and commercial and recreational activities. You know, at NOAA, we talk about science, service, and stewardship, but these aren't merely the words that drive our mission. They are the ethos that we bring to the whole of government approach to addressing the climate crisis, supporting nature, and protecting lives, livelihoods, and lifestyles as part of a climate-ready nation. We're proud to be an integral part of President Biden's vision to advance conservation and increase resilience to climate impacts. Thank you very much.
Please welcome Office of Science and Technology Policy Director, Dr. Arati Prabhakar.
Okay. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here with you today. I want to just start by thanking my wonderful colleagues, Secretary Haaland and Brenda Mallory from the Council on Environmental Quality for putting this event together. It's fantastic. What a delight to hear the President launch these incredibly important actions. You know, when humans first left Earth and started exploring space, the first thing we did was to look back at our planet, at this fragile and beautiful planet of ours. Carl Sagan called it the pale blue dot. And of course, the reason it's blue is that 3/4 of the surface of our planet is our ocean. And so I want to take a couple of minutes and talk a bit about what we're doing today about those waters that are so critically important to our past, but also to our future. You've heard the President earlier today talk about the administration releasing our first ever U.S. Ocean Climate Action Plan. And OSTP, my organization, is so proud to have worked with CEQ to lead this effort. We've worked with people across government and gotten so many really critically helpful and important inputs. And what we've ended up with is a plan that recognizes that there is no future with a stable and livable climate that doesn't work with the ocean, that doesn't take the ocean fully into account. And this plan outlines actions to advance the administration's ocean climate priorities, and these include efforts to advance climate solutions, but also to promote environmental justice, to support healthy communities, and to make sure that we have a robust and sustainable ocean economy. All of that has to happen together. And I think we all understand that there is no doubt that the ocean has been a victim of climate change, but we also now recognize that the ocean is a powerful source of solutions. And this action plan is a roadmap to harness the power of the oceans to achieve our climate goals. And you just heard the President demonstrate his commitment to that notion by taking this important step towards protecting all U.S. waters around the Pacific remote islands. And as he mentioned, once this process is complete, the U.S. will achieve the President's important goal of conserving at least 30% of ocean waters. This is a fantastic advance. This is such a huge step for conservation, of course, but we also just want to recognize that it's also about protecting the rich culture of the people who have such deep ties to this region. And when I think about that biodiversity, I loved it when the President talked about everything that is swimming in those waters. I feel as if we're peering into a prehistoric past of biodiversity, and looking into that past allows us to imagine the kind of richness of biodiversity that we need for our future as well. So let me just close by saying that yesterday with the IPCC report, the world's top climate scientists reminded us that the Earth's future is not predetermined, that there is a path to a much more sustainable planet and to a stable climate if leaders in every sector and in every country step up and take the kind of serious actions that absolutely are mandatory right now. And that's exactly what this president has done by committing to cutting U.S. greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2030, by getting to net zero by 2050, critically important goals. And we've taken important steps to start getting there. The President's Inflation Reduction Act, which is the greatest step ever taken anywhere on the planet to start stepping up to the climate crisis, the bipartisan infrastructure law, these new steps that are announced today. We are making critically important progress, and there's, as we all know, there's so much more work still to be done. America's science and technology and innovation system is integral to achieving that work, because that's how we're going to change what's possible and achieve America's aspirations. Thank you so much.
Please welcome Assistant to the President and National Climate Advisor, Ali Zaidi.
Hello. I get to close it out. Very excited. You are very excited. Let me just say a word of just gratitude for all of the good fortune that brought me to this podium. Secretary Haaland opened up our event this afternoon, and as she was up there, I was thinking about how she is a 35th generation New Mexican, and I am a first generation American. And every time I'm in, especially the American West, places like the Franklin Mountains and Castner Range, where folks have been here for thousands and thousands of years, 10,000 years of history in Castner Range. It just makes me feel this profound sense of connectivity to the idea of this nation. One of the reasons the president ran for office was to restore the soul of this nation, to unite us. Our public lands, our public waters, these spaces that we share, they hold sacred stories and memories from so many generations. And it's only when I went out there for the first time that I started to feel like I was not just part of my American story that started when we moved here in '93, but part of this story that Secretary Haaland speaks so vividly about, that all of us share, and that must be told and must be held on to. So, just want to start by acknowledging that profound sense of gratitude as a first-generation American to be able to participate in the important and epic task of holding fast to that national memory and all that comes with it. The other thing that's remarkable when you go to these massive landscapes, when you think about your place in a history that's 10,000 years old, is you start to feel really small. You start to feel really small. But hopefully being in this room and being part of the movement that so many of you represent, a movement of young people, a movement that looks like America, you don't just feel small, you feel incredibly, incredibly powerful. This is the group that's powerful enough that's protected Camp Hale and Bristol Bay and the Boundary Waters and Thompson Divide and Chaco Canyon and Grand Staircase Escalante the first time and then the second time, canyons and seamounts, the Tongass National Forest, which breathes in all of this air on behalf of North America, Bears Ears. The president tells this beautiful story of a young person on the campaign handing him a beautifully colored document and encouraging him to do it. He followed through on that task. The Pacific remote islands, Awekwame, Kastner Range, the list goes on. These are the places you are powerful enough to protect. You're powerful enough that you got the United States Congress both in the largest action on climate change, but also in historic bipartisan action on climate change to invest $3 billion in coastal restoration, $3.5 billion in forest restoration. For the first time ever, $1.5 billion in our urban forestry program, $1 billion in our parks and in our BIA, $500 million into habitat restoration, $500 million to restore watersheds, $125 million. I'm doing the list just so you get how profoundly powerful you are. The reach of this movement. And it's not just the length of the list or the millions of acres, it's the how we are getting this work done. The Secretary talked about this, the President did. Young people enlisted in conservation corps. That's how we're getting it done. Energy workers that saw oil and gas or coal leave their communities now enlisted in the task of capping those abandoned wells and sealing those abandoned mines. That's important. Partnerships forged with farmers and ranchers who know now they're part of this movement to tackle the most urgent crisis that we face. And tribal conservation, co-stewardship, indigenous knowledge being integrated into the way we make decision-making, but at the heart of it, an elevation of something so incredibly vital, so incredibly critical to the way we do work in the federal government, a recognition of our nation-to-nation relationship. So let's just think about what we can do if we harness all of that power and channel it at this great crisis that we face, the crisis of a changing climate, the crisis of biodiversity, which, by the way, is flashing faster and brighter. We can build those community parks in those communities that were historically redlined that are literally hotter today because there's more pavement and fewer trees. And this administration has harnessed the power of the whole of government and unlocked resources from the United States Congress to be your partner in that task. We can go build and expand wetlands that will absorb the fury of the surging seas even as we work hard to reduce our emissions. If we work together, we can preserve those old growth forests, those trees that you look like you can talk to them, you know what I'm talking about. To breathe in the excesses of our industrial base even as we work to decarbonize it. We can harness the power of blue carbon in kelp forests and mangrove trees. We can do all of that, and we can do it the way we've done it from day one. We can do it together. We can do it while recognizing that we are both small in the face of these epic challenges, small in the face of this incredible national memory, small in the face of these vast expanses, and yet so incredibly, incredibly powerful. Thank you so much, and thank you, all of you, for all of your leadership. Very grateful.
Thank you. Thank you all for attending today's Conservation in Action Summit. From here, we have a series of conservation breakouts downstairs. So as you exit the auditorium, follow the ushers, go down one floor. There are light refreshments in the Bison Bistro, and we'll have 6 topics for you to all discuss conservation with everyone in this room. So thank you all again, and we'll see you downstairs.